guys, iRepairify here, and I'm just going to jump straight into the iPhone 5s screen replacement. So first I'm going to remove the two bottom screws using my pentalobe screwdriver. Also just make sure that the iPhone 5s is powered off. My battery was already dead, so I didn't have to do that. Just a side note, don't use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the pentalobe screws. This will actually strip the screws and you'll have a lot less hassle in the end if you just buy a regular pentalobe screwdriver. So now I'm going to use a plastic pick to pry up the iPhone screen off the mid-frame. I do suggest using the left side of the screen because I find that the pick slips in the easiest at that side. Some people don't like to use the plastic pick, some people like to use an X-Acto knife or some type of metal tool. I do use a nylon spudger. If you want to use a metal tool, I suggest that you do take precautions because it might damage the mid-frame. So if you're okay with that, then go ahead. So now I'm using the nylon spudger and the plastic pick to pry up the bottom half of the screen. Make sure you don't pry up the screen fully or else you might damage the home button connector, and you'll see that just in a bit. So as you can see right here, that's the home button flex cable. So if you pull up the screen fully, you might actually tear that, so that's why you don't pull it up fully and you detach it like that. However, on this iPhone, there was a missing cap on the home button flex cable, which normally all iPhones should have. You need to remove that before you remove the flex cable. So now I'm gonna remove the 4 screws holding down the plate that holds down the screen's flex cables. You also might want to be holding the screen like I am in the video, because if you let it go, you might actually cause strain on the flex cables, possibly damaging them, and that won't help you at all. I'm not too sure why, but this specific screw that I'm about to unscrew right now is not magnetized properly, so it always falls out just like it is about to right now. Also, keep in mind that you should be having a screw chart next to you or a pen and paper to know where each screw goes, because a lot can go wrong in reassembly if you misplace certain screws or you lose certain screws or you don't know where certain screws go. Now I'm just going to pry up the 3 flex cables using my nylon spudger. Make sure you go very lightly because you can once again damage the flex cables, and also make sure you go very lightly on the motherboard because you can actually damage components on the motherboard. Now that I have removed the 3 flex cables from the motherboard, I can now separate the screen. From here on out, we're only working with the screen, so we can set the rest of the iPhone aside. I'm just going to start off by removing the screws that are holding down the home button. The 3 screws, as you can see right here. So this first screw that I'm taking off right now doesn't come off as easy as the other ones do. I actually decided to leave it there because from experience it actually doesn't fall off. If you do decide to take it off, make sure you don't lose the small bracket that comes in between the screw and the actual socket. You might need to use some tweezers to actually get it, but if you do lose it, it can cause some problems with the home button. Now that all 3 screws are removed, I'm just going to use my tweezers to remove the home button bracket. Moving to the side of the screen, I'm going to remove the 2 screws holding down the side of the frame. If you want to, you can remove the home button right now. However, I decided to do it later on after I remove the metal frame. That's just simply my preference, but you can remove it now if you want to. Now onto the other side of the frame, where there are also another 2 screws, but they're just located at different locations. For people that buy cheap replacement screens, the adhesive on the actual assembly might be loose, so the frame actually might not sit properly, and that's why it's important to always buy proper screens. There's still one more screw holding down the frame, so I can't remove the frame just yet. Now I'm going to remove that 1 screw, and I'm also going to remove 2 screws that are holding down the earpiece, the proximity sensor, and the front facing camera. It's also important to note that if you do mix up certain screws on the screen's assembly, some of the glass can break and you can cause a bunch of other issues as well. So now I'm going to remove the plate holding down the earpiece. It is important to note that this is a small little tab, as you can see here, that gets a bit stuck in the actual assembly, so it's important to slowly pry it out or else you might rip one of the flex cables. I'm just going to remove the earpiece with my hands. It's very light and just comes off easily. I also did heat up the area that I'll be touching right now, right there. This is because there's a bit of adhesive there, so sometimes on certain phones you don't need to, but on this one I had to. Most of the time you will, and just in case you should just heat it up either with a heat gun or with a blow dryer, and as you can see now it'll easily just come off like that if you heat it up. Just make sure that when you do apply the heat that it's for short periods of time and it's also at a distance so you don't fry any other pieces on the assembly. Now I'm going to remove the mic. It's just sitting in a small rubber gasket, but it's very easy to remove. Now the full assembly is loose, but it's still attached with adhesive on the frame. It's important to note that the two pieces I'm about to point at, which are the camera placeholder and the proximity sensor placeholder, should be transferred if they're not on the other screen assembly. This will cause some problems when you reassemble it and when you actually try to use the iPhone. I'll discuss it later at the end of the video. So now we can remove the metal frame, and now this frame will actually go on our new screen assembly. We could just set it aside because we don't really need it right now. So now we're going to go back to the home button. So like with the proximity sensor and the camera, I actually did heat up this flex cable as well. I highly suggest you do it too using a heat gun or a blow dryer like I said previously. This helps in removing the adhesive from the flex cable, and as you can see here it easily just pops up. Now I'm just going to pry up the home button from the other side by putting a bit of pressure. It doesn't take too much pressure, and as you can see it just pops up nice and easily after I remove the adhesive from the flex cable. So now we can set aside the home button and use it on the new screen assembly, and there you have it. Now we strip down the screen and we can use all the other components on our new screen. Just a quick reminder to transfer these two placeholders. You don't need to transfer the rubber gasket because it should already be on the new screen assembly, but if it's not, you can also transfer that as well. And that about sums up everything for the iPhone 5s screen replacement. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. And if you have any questions or requests, please leave it in the comments below. I just want to give a quick shout out to my carrier. They supply me with these phones so I can do the teardowns that I do. They do great reviews on cell phones. Check my description for a link to their channel.